Your lecture is on. Thank you for your questions. Look forward to answering them.
Welcome to the 5 Minute, where we discuss each of the week's 5 most fucked up topics. 8 minutes each. No, 5 topics. 8 minutes. 2 hosts. 1 very good guest, very special guest. Some singing, a lot of curse words, and as many cocktails as we deem necessary. LB, how are you?
I'm doing okay. I know that this video, this horrible video has dropped about half an hour ago. I have not seen it, everybody. There's no way I can watch something like that and then come on and do this. If you've seen it, I just, I don't know, Greg.
Yeah, I didn't watch it either. It's sad. The whole thing is just, it feels like lots of things escalating. Like how much worse can this get? It's the same thing with how many shootings were there this weekend. I mean, we after a while you're numb to it, but it's like, it's insane. Like I remember a friend of mine telling me years ago, 10, 15 years ago, there must be a number of people that will die before they change the gun laws. And we haven't hit that number yet. And it's crazy. And this is crazy too with the police fight. It's just nuts. And I don't know what it's going to take to change it. I really don't.
I don't either. We have to decide who we are. And all this violence is going to push us to that point of decision, I think. But I don't know when it is. And my heart just goes out to that mother. I watched her today. And just like as a side note, which I'll go ahead and share, I don't normally share this. So we had another pre-trial hearing for the man who killed my brother was this morning. So it was like I was ping-ponging between these things, and I was just like, okay, I can't. So, it's just I don't wish it on anybody. And unfortunately, it's kind of coming for everyone. So, okay. I just didn't want to roll into, we're going to have laughs tonight, guys. We're going to do our best to keep it light and also be informed and try to be focused and send this sort of second. Are we calling it a season? Why are we calling these things?
You know why? Because it's season 2. It's the end of the season. It's the finale. There has to be cliffhangers. There has to be plot lines that resolve themselves. We have to kill off some characters and introduce new ones.
Okay.
This is what we have to do at the end of the season. Right. There's no reason for it to be that way other than we need to take next week off. So
we do. We need to take next week off. We need a break. And so we're calling it seasons. When we need it, we take a conscious break. But we'll come back with some new stuff, which will be great.
But we did 17 in season 1. We did 18 in season 2. So it's kind of consistent. It's not inconsistent.
Make it to 20. We might grow up all the way at some point. I'm not sure. Let's dive in. Let's get into our guest because I want to get to our guest.
Yeah.
Really tonight for sure. All right, 8 minutes. Clock is going.
Okay, topic number 1: transubstantiation. There's been a bunch of articles, notably in the New York Times, and the Atlantic, and elsewhere, about trans kids and their parents, and kind of missing the point that, when this article came out in the Times especially, caused kind of an outrage in the trans community. And I want to talk about it for a few minutes up front, because not just the article, but the whole issue of it and what I think is happening, which is that, you have two different sides to this. You have the Republicans, DeSantis and Abbott and these governors of these red states who they basically want trans people dead. They want to legislate away the medical care. They want to go after the parents of kids who are trans for being good parents and supporting them effectively, which is beyond cruel. This is something that's happening right now, and all of this stuff with grooming and the assault on drag, by like the Libs of TikTok lady and these right wing accounts that Elon fucking Musk let back on Twitter. All that does is ramp up the rage against this community and put targets on their backs. And we've already seen violence against this community.
Yeah.
And I don't want more violence in that community. My position on stuff is a society is only as good as how it treats the most vulnerable members of the society. And I would argue that trans people, and especially trans kids, are the most vulnerable members of our society right now in the United States. And therefore, they need to be protected. So the question that anybody has to ask him or her or their self when they're thinking about this stuff and reading about it is my behavior in this helping or hurting? Because it's one of the two things. It's one of the two things. And I understand people not being comfortable with it or not understanding it. I understand reading that New York Times article and thinking, oh, these kids they're being, brainwashed by the peers to do this and this. And that's not like a thing, people who come out as trans, especially like a 50-year-old person like my age who comes out as trans, doesn't suddenly decide yesterday that they're trans. They've always been trans, and they finally have the courage and the that they can do it. So when kids come out, it's not it's not a new thing. It's just that our society is open enough, and can I use the word? It's woke enough that we allow it, and this is a good thing. We allow people to be who they are. So I think with articles like the New York Times article, the through line is that there's this disbelief that this thing exists at all. There's this idea that it's somehow not real, that everybody's faking it. I looked at the statistics, and I think it's 1.4% of the population between the ages of 14 and I think 30 identify as trans. And if you extrapolate that on the general population, assuming that there are people who are closeted, you're going to get 4 million people in the United States who are trans. There are not 4 million people whose primary motive for being trans is to put on a wig and kick ass at swim meets and shit. That's not a thing. That's like the least most important part of it. Right. So to look at it through that lens is wrong. It doesn't grasp the issue at all. So I guess, if you're going to go like the New York Times did and both sides it, you're giving credence to the idea that it's not real, that it's a fake thing, that people are faking it in some way. And they're not. They are not faking it. It is a real thing. And if it is a real thing, which it is, we need to protect the trans community, period. And if we don't, then we're just bullies and fascists. And that's it. That's my position. So, I get people being uncomfortable. I get people not understanding, especially if you don't know anybody who's trans and you don't have it in your life. I understand that it being, weird to you. But that doesn't mean it's weird to everybody, and it doesn't mean that it isn't real just because that your personal filter doesn't get what's happening. So that's what, substantiation, meaning that it's fucking real, and it is. That's it. That's my reason.
And it is. Oh, I love that. So.
And you had a point too, right?
My only point was I don't understand, like and no one seems to really be pressing on this in, like, if we're going to bring up the New York Times, and the Atlantic has done some real damage, in my opinion. But it's sort of this two faces of the time. You don't know who you're getting with the New York Times. So
oh my God, it's so frustrating.
Oh my God, it's crazy. But it's also like, what's the threat again? I just come back to them. Like, it really, truly, I think people need to be pressed into the argument of what the actual threat is. There's no threat here. Yeah. The threat is the person who's having an issue. You're the threat. You're the one who then tries to strip rights and freedom of expression from another. You're the one who, in a horrible sense, picks up a gun and goes and thinks that you're going to solve the problem. It's not, what isn't real is the threat
Yeah.
that coming from a trans, there's no threat. I think there was a bathroom thing. I feel like it's that bathroom thing that then people went crazy. It's like kind of evolved into this crazy, let's have a bathroom culture war. And it's like, okay, well, maybe what needs to happen, and it kind of, it feels very male. A lot of this, I'm not trying to do that kind of gender thing in that way. It's just, if it really was about the bathrooms, then just put stalls in all bathrooms. Like, let people have private moment in the bathroom. I never understood that about boys' bathrooms, that it was always all open. And okay, like, maybe fix that if we can't evolve enough, right? If we're not going to be like, oh, everything's fine. And if it's like, so I don't know where the threat is coming from that community. It makes no sense. No matter what you think about it, it makes no sense. There is no threat. No one's being harmed. And the people who are reacting to it, they're certainly not being harmed. They're just reacting. The threat is themselves, is their own feelings and their own thoughts. It's existing in that space. And so maybe go work that out in therapy or something. Get some mental health counseling. There was a guy, the threat is inside the house. It's you. You are the threat to yourself, because you can't wrap your mind around something, or you can't grow, or you can't just stay out of other people's business. Just get the hell out of someone's business. What business is it of yours? What does it matter? So I'm not trying to minimize anything. I'm just trying to, I wish there was that kind of journalism, instead of the kind of journalism that's just agitating more and agitating more around a non-threat. And by doing that, creating a threat. I do think those kinds of articles end up stirring up hate. And I do think we all can see where hate leads. And so for folks that I know that are trans, they get very upset around all of this, simply because they feel they're in danger, while being pointed at, being called the danger. And I don't know. We do that all over the show now. We do that projection. That projection's all over our society in ways that are, it's incredibly dangerous. And I wish it would stop. And I certainly wish journalism wouldn't just dive in there and say, we're going to get involved in it. What is there? There's no news here. What are you doing? What are you doing, New York Times?
Well, trying to explain it and work it through it is fine, because it's a new thing. But you have to ask the question, are you helping or hurting? That's it. That's my main point. Okay.
I love that point. Okay. So on that sort of keeping that thing going. So we have this schizophrenic break happening at the New York Times.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
Around Russiagate, right? So this massive piece of reporting, which I found incredible, about Bill Barr and Bull Durham. Is that what we have? And like, what the hell his name is? I don't even care. Porn stash guy, right? Let's not get into that. So those two guys coming together, and they're gonna go prove that it was the woman that was really the one that was doing all this stuff, right? And not, that's literally where they took out their lightsabers, and that's where the streams crossed, right? It's just like, these are, the Times reporting was sort of like, these are two very different people. You can tell. I saw Bill Barr at his confirmation hearing, Senate confirmation, I believe it was. Because Josh Hawley, brand new to the Missouri, from Missouri, brand new to the Senate, got Claire McCaskill's seat. This was our first introduction to this guy, really, was at this Bill Barr, confirmation hearing, because Donald put him up. And here, Josh Hawley is throwing out this stuff from Daily Caller, these talking points, these agitation. What do you think about this? And Bill Barr's like, he was like, oh my God, he was electrified. And yes, it was like, truly, that's what was going on. Like, this guy was exalting in the horse shit that Josh Hawley was feeding him straight out of Tucker Carlson and the Daily Caller, and Sean Hannity and all those guys, right? And I was like, oh my God, this guy is bathed in right-wing, far right propaganda. He's like rubbing it on it. Like he gets it. He knows all these nuanced crap that they think tank out of, whatever society, they have those stupid names for all their think tanks. And he's into it. It's like, holy shit, this guy, this retired guy who's been out of the game, right? He wants back in the game. And while he was retired, he just sort of plugged his dead dick into Fox News and became a Roger Ailes bot, right? And this is going to be our attorney general now. And I'm like tweeting that. So, oh my God, he's a right-wing propaganda. Oh my God, I got bashed because everybody thought, no, he's a white hat. How dare you disparage a distinguished attorney general? I was like, I don't give a fuck who he is and where he came from. He's into Tucker Carlson, you guys. Catch up. So I'm not surprised at all that he got in there. And I'm sure he believed the hype around. I mean, this is me being generous and not saying he's some really dark, malevolent force that was, intentionally doing all of his shit, even though there was quite a bit of intention there. But, he clearly got in there. The Mueller report was going. He got in right before it was going to come out. And I feel like he just got whacked in the head with the facts that, yeah, everything that woman said about this guy is true. He's a fucking gangster. He's a fucking criminal. He's like everything. We should look at his ties to Russia. We should look at it's all in here, guys. There's financial crime. There's all this shit, right? This guy is one of the worst fuckers on the planet. He's a goddamn criminal. And we elected him president and we're in real danger. And here, wait for him to get out of office because there's a stupid fucking memo. So what did Bill Barr do? I think his brain went, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I don't know what to do. Take care of it, Rod. Right, and threw it at Rod Rosenstein, and went out there and front-faced it and did this offensive bullshit strike with the Mueller report. Well, as it turns out, he did the same thing with Durham, and he still couldn't stop. It still had to be that it had to be the woman. She had to be the Democrats. It had to be them and not Donald. So he ran running all over the world to go to Italy, go to all these places. And what did he and Durham dig up? First of all, he shouldn't have even been doing anything together. And they weren't like, Mutt and Jeff there, running around fucking Europe. And then what happens? They find actual real crime, crimes enough, financial crimes that somehow the head of the CIA, Gina Haspel, was privy to. So what kind of fucking financial crimes are this? Who are you laundering money for now, Donald? Or who have you always been laundering for that Italy knows about? And, so there's like a secret meeting with Gina Haspel. It's like the one thing she and Bull Durham, whatever the fuck's porn stash guy, agree on. But we can't let the inspector general take this shit out, right? So Bill Barr does another, I'm going to front face this thing. And he starts talking about an ongoing investigation to the press, to Sean Hannity or Tucker Carlson or one of those McFuckfucks, those propagandists. And he's spilling the beans and saying it sounds very Rudy Giuliani, circa 2015. Oh, something's coming out. We're going to hear something about. He's doing all that shit. And so what happens is the people working for him, one woman in particular, sort of second at the Justice Department said, fuck you, I quit. You're not supposed to do this. And we're not going to go ahead and craft horse shit like what you did with the Mueller report around this special counsel investigation, especially where there's an inspector general coming in on part of it and following up. So it's just massive fuckery at the hands of Bill Barr because they couldn't make it fit. And so their narrative that it had to be Hillary that did the dossier and blah, blah, blah. And that's what started the investigation and all this. We're going to investigate the investigators because there must be something. And they're implicating the Dutch and the Dutch are like, fuck off. And they're just fucking around with all of our allied friends that are in there trying to help us figure out who the gangsters are, who the spies are, where the national security threats are and everything. And Barr and Durham are just in there fucking around. And I really think, and everyone was surprised at Durham, and I really think the thing with Durham is he also had that thing about, yeah, it's got to be the woman. I'm with you, Bill Barr. It's got to be Hillary. She's so awful. We got to of course she did this. There might be a little George Soros in there on the side, but definitely it's Hillary. She was up to something with her friends that do the, data shit, and they were trying to run some end game, and they've got deep state shit in there. Come on. This is what we tolerated, and so at the end of the day, guess what? That was the hoax.
Yeah, the hoax of the hoax.
The hoax was their offensive bullshit that they were doing, running around trying to find facts to fit into it. Why? So that they could control the narrative, so that they could put everything's just about this narrative and this content and having shit that you can put out, right? And get your 5 minutes on Sean Hannity, and maybe when you're done with this whole thing, they'll give you your own show. I'm so appalled. And I don't know what the fuck Merrick Garland is doing, letting that go. Maybe he just thought, okay, let these guys hang themselves. Let me give them all the rope in the world. I don't want to interfere. I'm not going to try to get in there. Let this play out. They'll let me know if they find something, if they don't find something. But I don't know. Did they let him know that they found something? Did he know that they found financial crimes implicating the former president that Italy has their hands on? I mean, Italy's a little busy right now. Their guys are finding the world's, greatest mafia bosses and taking them all down. They're going after the Ndrangheta finally. So they had time for this? Must have been a hell of a piece of information that our former CIA director knew all about. I got a lot in there. I know that was a lot, you guys, but I could riff on this for days. I was blown away. So at the end of the day, don't forget, this is the same New York Times that still has the article up that says that the FBI found no links between Trump and Russia, and they unleashed that right before the election of 2016. That article is still out there, that Lichtblau, whatever the fuck his name is, right? Yeah. And so that brings us to the other big piece of New York Times, or no, anybody reporting, because it was a live indictment.
Yeah.
With the FBI New York field office. We're actually not going to get into that tonight, guys, because believe it or not, we don't have time for it or space for it. Number one,
we don't know enough about it yet either. I mean, it is ongoing.
There's real indictments that we can dive into and look at, and now we've got an ongoing investigation that we actually know exists. So we'll just pay attention to those chips as they fall. But again, the schizophrenia of the New York Times.
Yeah, schizophrenia. Yeah. Okay.
That's no harm.
Okay, before we bring on our guest, we have to do karaoke. I want to explain this a little bit because there's these videos that came out this week where people claim to, have taken the vaccine, and then they would shake. So the video would be like this. It would be somebody like, steady hands hitting the button. They could do operation, hitting the button on the video, and then they pick up like a thing, and they go like, and it's like, and they're trying to drink it through the straw and they can't drink it. And then they put it down. And then again, steady hands as they're hitting the thing. And there were a bunch of these, and they were clearly ridiculous. And so that's it.
Yeah. And I also think I want to say one thing about it. I think people can get into a state of their own hysteria. And so as I was putting the video together, I saw some parallels with some other kinds of states of hysteria.
Okay, let's watch. Whoops, it didn't play. Sometimes it's doing this tonight. It's doing weird stuff. Nah, it'll work now.
Shake it up, baby, now. Shake it up, baby. Twist the truth. La, la, la. Pretend the job makes you tremble now. Hands ain't steady. Like that's some kind of proof for the farmer guy. Well, shake it, baby, now. Shake it up, baby. Can't hold the can of Coke. Want that Coke. You know you really got us going now. So realistic. The vaccines are too woke, but they help you not croak. Shake it up, baby. Shake it, baby. Now. Shake it up, baby. Shake it, it up, baby.
I am the chosen one.
Yeah. Okay.
It's very Pentecostal to me when I was watching these videos. It's just I think it's a natural thing for a cult is they end up in this sort of rapture of, speaking in tongues and, putting their hands up and shaking. So
yeah, I don't know. Okay. It's time to bring out our guest. I'm excited for this because he has a Substack called the Unsub Files, which you should subscribe to. He wrote a book called Compromised, Counterintelligence and the Threat of Donald J. Trump. And he was the deputy assistant director of the FBI's Counterintelligence Division. Oh, and he led the investigation into the FBI's investigation into Trump and the Russia ties. And not only that, Chunk made a hype video for him. So,
let's see this.
Thunderstruck with Pete Strzok.
Pete Strzok, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. I'm horribly, nothing like starting out horribly self-conscious to begin a bit, but Chunk, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm clearly not meant for stardom because this makes me flushed and uncomfortable. So,
well, the original version had
Thank you.
Rihanna doing a live song, and we were like, we better tone it down. We don't want to put him on the spot too much. So, well,
it's also wonderful to know Chunk, and I just know how much fun he had doing that. So it's more about enjoying something so much, right?
Good. Well, I'm glad, and thank you.
Thank you for giving him that. Oh my God, I love him.
So let's start with what we were just talking about, because this New York Times article comes out, and it's there's so much stuff in it that's batshit. So looking at it from your perspective, what's the first thing that struck your mind reading it? What was your first thought about it?
That there's so much wrong there, right? I mean, I read it online last night. Because I'm old, I like my print copy to read. And it's on the front page, and then you open, and it's the entire centerfold on both the left and the right. The whole article is filled with these events that are ethically challenged, improper, cause you to scratch your head, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And it's not like one kind of odd event. You have these stories of arguments and people quitting the team. And Stephanie, you mentioned, Nora Danny, his like lieutenant who has worked with him for years and years and years, quitting because he had behind her back gone and asked somebody to write a draft right before the election that they could use to try and skew it one way or the other. And so bad that she decides, I know we have a decades-long relationship. I can't stand for this, and I'm quitting. Then you have later another attorney out of the DC U.S. Attorney's Office just before the Sussman prosecution, apparently following some argument about whether or not they should try it at all, indict him at all, who says, I can't stand for this, and leaves. I've never, in my 20 years in the FBI, I never saw a U.S. attorney, an AUSA, an assistant United States attorney quit over some principal disagreement. Never heard of anybody doing that. So you have that extraordinary thing on top of this craziness that they opened a criminal case into Donald Trump that leaked out, and everybody therefore assumed it had to be somebody in the deep state that they were criminally investigating, that they let that misperception just flourish. But in reality, there was a criminal investigation.
It was them. It was
right.
They were the deep state.
On top of like essentially going to the director of the NSA, and the New York Times takes out the swear words, but from what they say is like, if you fuck with me, I'm going to fuck you I know you people were all ganging up to like target Trump. Give me all the information you have from the Attorney General of the United States, telling a general in charge of the NSA that. And as it turns out, guess what? Nothing. On top of the fact that they went and tried to get the records of this guy, said some nonprofit that, affiliated or funded by George Soros, who is in touch, allegedly, based on Russian disinformation, potentially, in touch with somebody, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, a congresswoman at the time, and essentially went to a judge, not once, not twice, not any judge, the chief judge of the District of Columbia, saying, give us this order. It's called the 2703D for your nerdy / attorneys in the audience, order for email information. That same chief judge said not once but twice, no.
Yeah.
There's not sufficient information here. So what does he do? He then goes and he uses the power of the grand jury to try and go and get some of that information anyway. And it turns out that both of these people say, we never talk to each other. So just event after event after event after event. And again, certainly unethical, but up to the point of, is it disciplinable? Is it sanctionable? Is it illegal? I don't know if it's illegal, but real questions. And all of that in the fact of John Durham's been reporting to a Biden Department of Justice for more than 2 years now. Now, Merrick Garland got confirmed a little bit afterwards, but I think 20 plus months, John Durham's boss is Merrick Garland. So when you look at this pattern of misconduct, this pattern of unethical behavior, what the fuck is this Department of Justice doing about it? I don't get it.
We don't have to investigate the investigators of the investigators.
Yeah, I mean, it's like
this is what we gotta do.
Clusterfuckery that never ends, right? I don't know. It's disappointing, right? Because
lucky Donald Trump.
Right,
Lucky Donald Trump is the beneficiary of all of this. It's not confusion, weaponization of the DOJ, being able to take that talking point and run with it. Also, can you do that with a grand jury? I got questions about this grand jury. Can you actually knowingly pursue a grand jury after a judge has said no, no, no?
Sure, because he had. I mean, that is something where you get different information, right? I mean, there's something. The volume and type of information you get is different between that order from the judge versus what you can get from a grand jury subpoena. But there is still, at the end of the day, that is, there should be some level of oversight. And again, the biggest thing in my mind out of all of that was probably they opened a criminal investigation of Trump, a financial investigation. What happened?
Let's go ask Bill Barr's daughter, who's the head.
Did they disprove it? Did they prove it? Were they unable to resolve it? If they were unable to resolve it, what the hell is going on right now? I mean, I know when we started looking at Trump, particularly after we opened, like after he fired Comey and right before Mueller was appointed, and we opened the case on Trump, the question was, if you're trying to understand him, you have to understand the money behind him, that not only for the campaign, but just the flows of money, and particularly if there's any, Russian oligarch money. I think Eric Trump had made that truthful statement. I think words to the effect of, a disproportionate amount of our real estate holdings are from Russians. And so the question is, if there is any sort of illicit money flows from the Russians or anybody else, any other foreign nation, how do you figure that out? And we had brought in a huge team to work as part of the special counsel's office, trying to understand the finances of Trump. And it's huge. That's a massive undertaking. Yeah. Now, Mueller had, I don't think they've ever released the specific figures, easily 60 plus people, attorneys, analysts, agents, investigators, working on all these things. Durham, I think, never had more than 10. And I don't know what, if any, like forensic accountants, I don't know what, if any, he had at all. And so if you're trying to investigate an allegation of financial crime provided by the Italians, there's no way they did a thorough, in my opinion. We don't know what they did or didn't do. We should. We hopefully know. Hopefully, Attorney General Garland's asking that question right now. But I don't know how you get to the bottom of that with the personnel that Durham had on hand and resolve that in a credible way. But at a minimum, answer that question. What happened?
Yeah.
Is there a declination memo? Who knows?
Whose money is it? Can we find that out? How about just whose money is it? Because it's not his.
I don't think they investigated it very much. I'm just going to go out on a limb. I flagged
Oh my God.
the 2 paragraphs from the article because I think this is important. I just want to read it real quick for anybody that hasn't read this thing. This is from the Times. But in October 2019, a garbled echo became public. The Times reported that Mr. Durham's administrative review of the Russia inquiry had evolved to include a criminal investigation, while saying it was not clear what the suspected crime was. Citing their own sources, many other news outlets confirmed the development. The news reports, however, were all framed around the erroneous assumption that the criminal investigation must mean Mr. Durham had found evidence of potential crimes by officials involved in the Russia inquiry. Mr. Barr, who weighed in publicly about the Durham inquiry at regular intervals in ways that advanced a pro-Trump narrative, chose in this instance not to clarify what was really happening. So this is like a Judith Miller kind of thing all over again, where they're just playing the fucking press to get the story that they want. It goes back to what Trump was trying to do with Biden in Ukraine when he was extorting Zelensky. We don't need an investigation. We just need you to say that there's an investigation, and we'll run with it. That's what this is. And he took an investigation into his own crime and did this thing. It's the audacity is really stunning. I mean,
yeah, and the parallels are amazing to me. I mean, if you step back, I mean, it's like Durham's Odyssey. They put him and his team on a little fucking boat, and they send them out there, and they're looking for wrongdoing. And what do? They use allegedly, potentially Russian disinformation to try and go after records because they didn't really vet it and they didn't try and figure out whether or not it was bona fide information or not.
Okay, so I just want to make sure everybody knows that disinformation is what you were talking about with that there was communication between people who never met and never communicated.
Right. I think I forget his name. Leonard Bernardo, I think was his name, at the subsidiary of the Soros Foundation, and Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz. But that, at least Bernardo says, I've never spoken to her, never had email contact with her. So one of the allegations was the Bureau was, following this information from Steele and others that was disinformation, and they should have known better. What does Durham do? He goes and he uses potentially Russian disinformation where he should have known better. Then he gets this allegation of criminal wrongdoing by Trump. Probably, I'm guessing, I don't know, doesn't do a thorough job. When Durham is out there looking at these allegations that the FBI didn't do a thorough job to figuring out what Hillary Clinton was or wasn't doing with regard to Michael Sussman and Alpha Bank and all these other little nonsense peripheral games, then you get into the allegation that, well, the Bureau had it in the tank because of political motives and they were going after Trump and protecting Clinton, when it's clear from Barr's behavior, they were protecting Trump rather than being objective. So every single thing that they were supposed to be looking for in that journey, they're presented the opportunity themselves, and each and every time they do the things that they're trying to find fault with. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to make up a narrative that just lays this pattern. I mean, it's like a play. It's like a tragedy where they just continually are presented their own issue of what they're supposed to be looking at, and they choose to do the wrong thing. And I'm sure they're probably artists and thinkers deeper than I in your audience. It just, the tragedy of the parallels and the wrong choices at every step is surreal. And again, not surprising, unfortunately, given what we've all seen from Bill Barr, but there it is. And,
Well, and I think we come back to, is anyone with authority, meaning at the Department of Justice, going to ask why? Why did they do this?
He's going to have to give a report to Garland. And the question in my mind is, but for this New York Times reporting, would the report have addressed any of this whatsoever? Or would it be like, oh, everything was fine, here are our findings, and make no mention of all these issues that the New York Times, through some pretty decent digging and reporting, was able to tease out? But, again, we'll see what DOJ ultimately issues. Garland has said in the past that his intent is to make public as much as he can of the report. But between the failed prosecution of Michael Sussman, the failed prosecution of Igor Danchenko, this damning New York Times article. I don't know how anybody, again, other than the right-wing media ecosphere, is going to take anything he has to say seriously at all.
One thing about Soros, just before it floats out of my brain, is that the hatred of Soros it is a Putin thing. Putin has been hating on Soros for a lot longer than the right-wing media here has been hating on Soros. Just FYI. So anytime there's some kind of Soros thing, it's, that's where it comes from probably. Or it's somebody trying to curry favor with him, So I don't know.
Started with Limbaugh, right? I mean, I tracked that at one point. Where did we first hear the boogeyman that was George Soros? And it was when he started he has a big nonprofit that looks at corruption and was very, very focused on Russian organized crime at one point and the corruption coming out of all that. And out of the Kremlin, when it fused, which was the beginning of the, you could go back to Yeltsin, but, really, truly the Putin era. So it was, when you've got talking about investigators, there was investigative power there that he had because he was hiring people like Bob Levinson. He was hiring people out of the FBI who had expertise in an era where almost nobody did. And what were those folks doing? They were hunting down financial crime and counterfeit cigarettes. Interesting how those two things connect, but
and I'd say one other thing: don't discount the level of anti-Semitism here. I mean, underneath it all, there is absolutely part of both an anti-Semitic aspect to it, as well as this playing into the notion of the New World Order controlled by the Jews that comes into this nasty hate films. Anger at
Elders of Zion crap.
Exactly, right. All of that.
It's been perfected. It's easy to trot that out.
Okay, but you're right about all the mirrors and the stuff and the tragedy and how it would be a play, except that the tragedy would have to end in death and not with just nothing happening and these guys just being fine and getting away with everything. That's not how. That's not how
we've adopted it for a 21st century Western audience. It's a little. It's more. We don't. Yeah.
Well, let's move on to our next topic and see if I think we've got Pete sticking around. Now, the last time you were on our show, we were like, ask Pete. Remember, we said we're going to start doing that. I don't know if there are, Pete, come back because we got to ask you things. So this is, it might be a little left field for you to talk about Kavanaugh, but it's right in the wheelhouse of the FBI. Wasn't necessarily your division. And we do have this new film coming out. Oh, I need to put my timer on. Sorry, everybody. That Doug Liman did. Now, I want to say a couple things. First of all, nobody knew about this movie. And so that's very typical in this town, and that's the movie making town that I live in and work in. Is movies of that when filmmakers come in and kind of say, and they have great strength and power, like Doug Liman does. And this is the guy who did the Bourne. He launched the Bourne Identity series, guys. He didn't do any. He doesn't do franchises, but he launches them. He won't keep coming back to direct. I think that was Greengrass. They pulled it on the rest of that. But he's a really great filmmaker, and it can keep things tight and quiet. And our town does a great job of that, much better than apparently former presidents and vice presidents. I'm like, how is it that no one sees any of these scripts and not even knows that these projects are going on in crazy Hollywood? And yet our national secrets are like in garages and in safes and I don't know, in Mar-a-Lago with the cleaning crew. So, but it's one thing we do well. And so Doug Liman did a documentary. It's very focused on it. Premiered at Sundance. Nobody knew about it until the day before the premiere. It's very focused on Brett Kavanaugh, specific to the allegations from, now I can't remember her name. Ramirez.
Yeah.
And what happened to all the tips that came into the FBI, but really focusing around Ramirez and that time at Yale and what Brett's behavior was and how many tips were coming in. And they have people on the record showing their face, giving their names that went to law school with him, that were witness to these events, all saying Yeah, we let the FBI know this guy, he's as bad as what you think he is. He's just a terrible, terrible, terrible drunk, just a terrible drunk, and would get just and that laughing all the time. So that remember that from Christine Blasey Ford's testimony. It's like I remember the laughter. There was just this laughing, and that certainly was Ramirez's experience and everyone else's experience for Brett, who had a tendency to just pull down his pants and expose himself and think it was funny to actually assault women while exposing himself to the laughter of everybody around, or maybe just himself in his drunken stupor. So Doug stayed very focused on that. He knew enough to know, I do want to preface this as well. There was a time where I had a big project in development. I had a big book. It was going out. This was 2018, I think, early 2019. And when the Mueller report came out and Barr did that thing, it killed what I was working on because I was working on Trump and the money. And I had tweeted before then, like, oh my God, everybody has a project. And this was like every single production house that I knew of and every studio, they all had projects in development around Trump and Russia and money laundering and, and the GOP. And there was a Nikki Haley script. Like there was everything out there. There was so much, it was a whole genre. And then it just all got killed. So I understand how, from one thing or another, right? From either executives thinking, well, there's no story there because they believed the Russia hoax thing, to because they're subject to that as well, to real fuckery from people who were in lawyers that were threatening people and shutting projects down and scaring people. So Doug kept it really tight, released this thing. This film is everyone's gonna see this movie now. It does not reflect well on the FBI or Chris Wray at all. It's very bad. It's very bad. It's not even falling into the category of, well, the FBI's client was the president at that time, so they just handed everything over to the president. They said that they investigated stuff that they never investigated. There was no investigation. It was a catch all the evidence, hand it to the White House. Nobody investigated. No investigation. No follow-up. Nothing. What do you think, Pete Strzok?
So I really want to see it. I mean, I think Doug Lyman's father, Arthur Lyman, was a big deal, a big attorney. He worked on Iran-Contra. I mean, he, as a government attorney, so Doug by family has a, kind of unique perspective into the way that federal investigations occur. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. I do, and I'm concerned because on the one hand, I mean, I think people need to understand that when it comes to the FBI does background investigations of judicial appointees. I did, as a baby agent up in Boston, because I was the new guy. You get, somebody's been nominated for the bench and you have to go back and, interview their associates and get their fingerprints and do these sorts of things just to get them into the confirmation process. And the highest level of that, of course, is for the Supreme Court. So when it comes to those investigations, they are not the authorities that the FBI brings to those investigations are not those that it ordinarily does. It isn't, we open an investigation, pursue every lead wherever it may go. These are very much defined by, in this case, the White House. Go out and do exactly this, no more than this. You may do 1 and 3 and 6. You may do nothing else. Now, on the one hand, that's by design. That's the authority that the FBI has. But on the other hand, that in many ways, it creates a potential setting where, and I think it unfortunately may have occurred in this case, there were very logical things that should have been followed up that the FBI, probably at Bill Barr's urging, used as a fig leaf to not pursue things that should have been. That as an investigator, when you sit there and you say, well, I was told to go to this house and look for evidence of a bank robbery, and you go to the house and the house is on fire, and you say, well, I'm only here to look for evidence of a bank robbery. Is that a legal defense of the FBI's action? Sure. Is that a valid moral defense? Absolutely not. And so I think what I'm interested to see is, what were the things that were being provided to the FBI? And separate and distinct from, did the FBI follow like the rule of the regulations, to a T? that only goes so far, because if you have very credible allegations coming in that the regulations don't allow you to pursue, well, then there are ways you remedy that. The solution isn't just to throw up your hands and say there's nothing we can do. The solution is to go to the Attorney General, or to go to the White House, or to go to the Judiciary Committee in either the House or the Senate and say, hey, look, very openly, we were told to do this, and this is all we could do. However, in the conduct of doing this, we found all these other things, which we didn't have authority to pursue, and the White House did not want us to. But we want to be very forthright and open with you and the American people about what was said. And of course, that's not at all what occurred. I mean, you had
No.
so.
What about the senators, though, Pete? Tell us this. Okay, you are the head of the FBI. We're going to make you the head of the FBI. You're the head of the FBI, and you have senators. First of all, the investigation began at the request of the Senate. The senators confirming, because they had just gone through this thing with Blasey Ford. There were women saying, remember Jeff Flake in the elevator getting cornered, which I hear is in the movie too. Like all that stuff is in there. And then you have now follow up on it all by that Sheldon Whitehouse has been very vocal about and leading and polling the FBI director, say, we still are waiting on this for you. You were supposed to give us the findings of your investigation. You said you did an investigation, and Ray's like, yes, and I'll get that to you. And we did, and I'll get it. So when there's senators calling on you as the head of the FBI, and they're calling you to the carpet, and he's not giving anything, what is that?
My opinion, Director Ray's trying to avoid becoming a political football. I mean, you had, I think at the time, a Republican majority. You don't want to be, whatever you have to say is going to be seized on by one side or the other to advance a narrative. And, unfortunately in this case, the narrative which coincided with the truth was the narrative of the minority. So how do you get in there and say something that is going to preserve, the authorities and the funding and everything else of the FBI? Where do you draw your line about what you're going to say and not say, which may or may not enrage the majority of the House or Senate, but it's the truth? And in my opinion, and again, I don't have the totality of what Director Ray was doing day in and day out. My general sense is, I think in this case, I would have erred on being more fulsome in disclosures of what was found and not found. And that could be, you don't have to give the information. It could be something as simple as, Senator, we encountered things and allegations which we were not able to pursue because of the limitations that were placed on us by the White House. Because in this process, the White House, not the Senate, not the FBI, have the authority to tell us what we can or can't do. And in this case, it was very narrow. And so there were these unexplained allegations or unexplored allegations that we couldn't pursue. And if you want to pursue it, that's something you need to take up to the White House. But that's not an FBI call. Ray kind of sort of said it, but he didn't really give a full-throated, not like that. And again, at the end of the day, I think the funny thing is, and that you and folks listening can go look it up, because they publish like their award winners for these annual Attorney General awards for things about best national security investigation, best criminal investigation, best this investigation. They gave out an award to the team that did the Kavanaugh confirmation investigation work. And you can find it. So this was something, Barr was like, great job, team. You got them through. And I'm going to give you an award for it.
This is not good.
And it's not a Razzie? It's not a Razzie. Okay.
Well,
it's not a Razzie.
Here's the thing that I don't understand. This is what I don't understand. Like who has the ability to prosecute crimes? And if the FBI is investigating this guy, even in a cursory way, like LB and I wrote years ago now, like a vast 5-part long, it's like a 20,000 word thing about Kavanaugh and his finances and the dealings with Kennedy and all this stuff. And we're just effectively two people on the street. We don't have inside information.
We're the Greek chorus. Yeah. You decided we're the Greek chorus in this whole
but if investigators, even if they can only do 1, 3, and 6, if they go to the house to do the burglary and it's not on fire, but they find like a gambling ring illegally housed in the garage, I mean, the FBI can't just on its own recognizance just be like, hey, this is illegal. Let's bust this shit.
And that's a good question. And the question is, what did they find when they showed up at the house, right? I mean, we still don't know. We have some indication. Maybe this documentary from Doug may throw a lot of light on it. But in the past administration, even if the Senate or House wanted that information, they would have gotten into a fight with Bill Barr and the Trump administration about releasing it. That's not the scenario right now. So if the Democratic Senate, the Senate Judiciary Committee, wanted this information and really wanted to expend the political capital, they are not going to find in the person of Attorney General Merrick Garland or President Biden an administration who are going to push back and say, hell no, I'm going to take you to court. You can't have it. So there is an alignment if people want to spend the time. And I don't know, maybe they will. And maybe if they don't, I suspect there's some sort of backroom sort of dialogue about, is there something here that is worth going after, that there's, sufficient payoff for all the, effort to put this on the front page. But you have a Democratic Senate, you have a Democratic administration. If there is malfeasance there, if they want to get to the bottom of it, you've got the cast you need to do it. So let's see.
We come back to a lack of will again.
Yeah.
I don't, and and one thing I don't know, and we're going long, and I got to go in a little bit too. But look, everybody's sitting there, and I agree somewhat. Attorney General Garland was a distinguished judge for a long time, and before that, he was a prosecutor. And some of the criticism is, recently has been, well, he's still thinking like a judge. He doesn't want to be political. He doesn't want to think politically. I agree with that compared to somebody like Bill Barr on the one side and like Eric Holder maybe on the other, although Holder and Barr not at all analogous. But Garland is still political. He still thinks, he is a savvy political player. To sit there and say, oh, he still thinks like some judge in an ivory tower. No, I don't credit that. He's a distinguished judge, but to kind of sit there and think, he doesn't consider politics. He doesn't understand politics. Baloney. He understands politics. And so
he's afraid of it, which is political. That's making a political decision to not investigate because you fear it'll be perceived as political is a political act.
Right. Or I think the way I would think about it is, the decision to investigate the political blowback from that is greater than the political blowback from just saying, let the process run as it always has. It's not so much, I don't want to be, I'm sure there's an altruistic, I don't want to be seen as political, but there's also a very calculated of option 1, 2, and 3, which have the worst impact to me compared to what's the possible benefit. And I take the plus and the minus and I sum all those out, and whatever the best solution is, that's what I'm going to go with. I do think he is a good man. I do think he is driven in a morally righteous way, but I don't think that means he's, not thinking about the political realm in terms of the impact of his decision making.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
As Rush said, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. That's it. That's the line. Okay. Do you have time to stick around for like 5 more minutes? Or you got to go.
5. Yes, 5, and then 5, and then
Okay.
I got to bail.
Okay, 5. So last topic: capture and release.
We're gonna zoom past announcements, except for one. Guys, we are taking a break we'll be back not next week, but the week after. Is that right?
Yeah.
The week after next. Okay.
Yeah.
That's our announcement. You can keep coming to the page. You can keep playing the videos, and go to the store and join and subscribe and all that good stuff. Okay. Last topic. Capture and release. Okay. So we've got insurrectionists on the Homeland Security Committee. Is it Homeland Security or National Security? Like we've kind of been captured. We started with talking about the New York Times, which is a paper of record, and our press in general. It appears we've got some press being captured. We've been saying that for years. Okay, that institution. Then we've got, Donald and his money and that whole party, and then that of the Department of Justice and the Inspector General and a special counsel, and there's fuckery and all that. And then you go to the Supreme Court, and oh my God, what the hell is Brett Kavanaugh? And we haven't even talked about the leaker that somebody that, oh, we don't know who the leaker is. Well, maybe it's one of the 3 hamburglers you got sitting right there, like Alito or Thomas or his creepy wife. So with the court appears to have this capture going on, and this just corruption and fuckery and tentacles in all of our shit. And now we've got this house that's gonna run their own Durham investigation because everybody's still bent about Carter Page and his stupid fucking bucket hat. He's the dumbest goddamn spy or whatever the hell that guy was, bungling around. You know, he needed a theme song, clearly, just to walk down the street. This goofball that everyone's going to the mattresses on the right. Still, you know, Devin Nunes running around in Ubers, the whole thing. No one's forgotten about it, least of all them. And they're still trying to put that genie back in the bottle and say it was all the woman. It was Hillary. So now those investigations are going to start. I am grateful for the New York Times for getting that article out before they started their, you know, we got the Trey Gowdy, you know, resonating hard on going on through Kevin McCarthy because he's so dumb he doesn't even know which way his dick is supposed to point. Excuse me, Pete. I'm sorry. I'm getting really rowdy now. It is the season finale. I'm delivering for the audience. But so what the hell are we? I feel like we did get hooked as a whole. All our institutions, America is on the hook. Is there any way to take this floppy fish of a smelly, stinky of democracy of where we're at and put it back in the water and swim away? Or are we going to get filleted? What's happening? This is my question for you, Pete. Is there any hope?
We better hurry up because we got 2 years before the next president gets sworn in. So I know we are moving, you know, again, because I'm, you know, came out of the judicial system. If you want to move up the chain, and I think DOJ is, you've got 2 layers to go, right? I mean, you've got the head of the Proud Boys and the head of the Oath Keepers who have been prosecuted and found guilty. And the next step is that ring immediately around Trump, the Roger Stones and Mike Flynn's and, you know, Lindell's and Mark Meadows and, you know, all these folks, you know, whether they are or aren't charged. And then the last person there is Trump. And if you're going to do something in the judicial system, you better hurry up because it takes nothing as fast as America has seen. But we are, you know, kind of on this countdown clock of 2 years to go, and not until the elections, but year and 9 months or so away. So I hope, you know, on the one hand, my worry is everybody looked at the midterm elections and said, oh, the red wave never materialized. America came to its senses. All these Trump endorsed candidates weren't elected. All these vote deniers weren't elected, and we're fine. You know, it's a new day in America. It's not. Trump is announced. Trump is still, in every poll that I've seen, the overwhelming favorite, even against Ron DeSantis, let alone all these, you know, Glenn Youngkin and, you know, lesser players. Yeah, Trump is still the presumptive Republican nominee for president of the United States. And this sort of rosy glow that everybody's sort of relaxed following the midterm elections is, in my opinion, a false sense of comfort. We need to be preparing that Trump is going to be the Republican nominee. He is still going to have a base of 30% plus of the voting public who is going to support him come hell or high water, and that there's going to be a fight on our hands. So I don't know. I don't have a good, happy answer for you other than if people aren't worried and people aren't fighting, they're mistaken because there's that threat is still there. And I don't see any sign that it's going away.
Oh boy. Okay. That's not sending us out on a happy note.
I do
you
have a happy
thunderstruck us. You're supposed to thunderstruck them. You thunderstruck us. Oh no.
I do think it's good that they indicted McGonigal. I know you can't comment on that, and we're not going to ask you to, but I think fundamentally the fact that they caught him, and then there was another indictment of people that were like bots that were doing that stuff. It feels like things are kind of going on behind the scenes. Because if you go with the McGonigal thing, probably traces back to when they seized or searched Deripaska's property and stuff like that. So stuff is working. Anytime that there's evidence that the DOJ is actually doing stuff, to me, it's like, good. This is great. Shit's actually happening. It's not some, there'll be some thing on Twitter. Merrick Garland's going to address the country at 2 p.m. and I'm just like, fuck, and then he doesn't come on till 3, and he's a terrible public speaker, and it's about some thing that no one cares about at all. And that's usually how this is played out. But stuff is happening, even though I don't know, the documents thing, it seems like maybe Jack Smith should have pounced by now, but what do I know?
I mean, I think, okay, so here's where I'm balancing the two of you. Where I'm left is, two great men. Where I'm left is, I just want to know if I can kind of move to the back of the line of the fight and take a rest. Like, I feel like I'm a little worn out.
You're not allowed.
I'm
sorry.
Old.
No. You're Patrick Mahomes. You got to
the
tape
marathon
up
where you're like, why the hell did I decide to do this? You got 4 miles to go.
You're Mahomes. You tape up the high ankle sprain, and you got to play the game.
But you got 4 miles to go.
But I'm overweight and I have arthritis.
You got it. You got it. You got it.
Pete, I don't have it. I'm gonna.
You got it. You
got
it. Just a little bit more gas in the tank.
All right, everybody. Find your 27,000th wind. Because here we go again. I'm just gonna go out and find Semyon Mogilevich myself and put him on camera and take everybody down. I might just do it.
We should see if we can get him on the show. It'd be good. He likes the press.
He's hiding out right now.
All it will take, by the way, to make everybody feel better is if they indict some big motherfucker. That's really all it would take. If they indicted Mike Flynn tomorrow, we would be high for like I would fly on that for 6 months. Easy. I
would like for him to just be off YouTube and Twitter, and that would be.
That's not going to happen.
My God, that's how low our bar is. All right, okay, democracy. I have a feeling we're going to get filleted, but maybe it'll be delicious, and there'll be a second course that we never knew we could have. I don't know. Maybe there'll be food poisoning. Maybe there's mercury in the fish, and the people eating it will die.
Mercury or Mars? We got to fly to Mars. I don't even know what I'm talking about.
I don't even.
Okay. Pete, your Substack, it's called the Unsub Files. Do I have it right?
It is.
Okay.
It is, and it's free. Go take a look.
Yeah,
a lot of
good
things we're talking about, and I'll get some post up about this whole Durham reporting out of the New York Times. So go check it out and have something up this weekend on that.
Yeah, it's good. And your book is called Compromised. Check that out. Follow you on Twitter. You're always a good Twitter follow. I doubt anyone here isn't following you, but come on.
Thank God I'm seeing you, because a lot of people I don't see anymore, but I see you, and I was retweeting you a little bit.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. You've eluded the somehow the the thing. So all right, we will be back in 2 weeks, because this is the end of season 2, and season 3 is going to be a whole lot different, except it isn't really going to be different at all. So it's like season 2 and 3 of The Wire, I think, were very similar. And then there are 3 and 4 of The Wire, and then they kind of drifted off. I don't know. Okay. Enough talking. Everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for the great comments. Hit the like button, I think I'm supposed to say. Please sign up, subscribe, and join, and all that fun stuff. Have a good 2 weeks.
And thank you, Pete Strzok, for giving us a season finale.
Yeah. A worthy season finale. A worthy season finale. And as a reward, we won't play Chunk's thing again.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
We're secretly going to play it. We're going to share it just amongst ourselves.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.